in the next part of the blues in measure 5, where you go to the 4 chord for a couple of measures, measure 5 out of 12. Precede that D9 chord we talked about with its 2/5. Don't worry if the music theory boggles you. I'm just going to give you the chords, and they're E minor and A, or E minor 7 and A7. Or in my case, what I did was E minor 9. And then I did just a fancier version of A7. I did E flat 9. That's a flat 5 substitution. That's a big music theory term, just meaning there's a certain chord that you can substitute. Instead of doing a plain old A7, you can do an E flat 9, and it serves the same function, but it creates this bigger pull, this more urgent need to get to the final destination chord of D9. So I did E minor 9, E flat 9, D9. I do that a lot. That's one of my favorite little moves. I'm going to show you those chords. So the E9 was X 7 5 7 7 7. You bar across once again. If you can't bar across, use 2 separate fingers. Do X 7 5 7 7 with 2 separate fingers and just leave off the high E string. By the way, you could hit your low E string as the root on that, like a Joe Pass kind of deal. When you're playing solo jazz guitar, you often need to fill out the sound. And so someone like Joe Pass would play a lot of bass notes under his chords to fill it out and sound more like a bigger sound, a piano or something. So yeah, E9, E minor 9, and then E flat 9. That's the same as D9 that we just learned. It's just a fret higher on purpose. We're playing 1 fret too high so that it leads into the chord, creates this tension, and resolves. That's a cool move. Any rock player could learn that. Anybody who's a blues rock player that doesn't want to get into jazz, that's one jazz move you could learn, and it wouldn't sound overtly jazz. It wouldn't sound way sophisticated. It would just add a little color to your regular rock, your regular blues. That's a common move. So again, E minor 9, E flat 9, which was 6 5 6 6 6, which drops back to D9. So these 3 chords in a row. That's a cool sound. I'm gonna do all of that, everything we talked about so far. So already there's a lot of action, there's a lot of movement. I'm going to slow that down. Here it is again in slow motion. So just by doing something simple like playing 1 fret higher than the actual target chord, then going to that target chord, that gives you a great kind of sound. For instance, A sharp going into A, or B flat going into A, D sharp or E flat going into D. 1 fret too high, and then back to the regular chord. That's a good move. You hear that all the time. You could even extend that and go 1 fret too low. Jimmy Page did that a lot in I Can't Quit You Babe, Led Zeppelin 1, first album. And so it's not like this is only Joe Pass and Jim Hall and Pat Metheny and John Scofield. This is Jimmy Page. This is Jimi Hendrix. This is like good meat and potatoes blues rock stuff too. So just in case you maybe get intimidated not only by music theory, but thinking, I don't like jazz, I don't want to learn jazz, jazz is too fancy, too sophisticated. Well, it wasn't for Jimmy Page and Jimi Hendrix, so there you go, Gary Moore, people like that. So moving on, we're on our 4 chord. We made it to measure 5 out of 12. We're plugging along there. Some guys will do this, and gals. There's some good women guitar players out there today too. I shouldn't just say guys. And then from D9, you could do a D sharp diminished chord. Diminished adds a really cool sound to your blues. This particular one was X 6 7 5 7 X. D sharp diminished 7. So here's everything up to that point. And that creates some dissonance that kind of wants to go back to A, which we do. We go back to A. So these chords create this tension and resolution, this dissonance and consonance that just keep the music moving. It's always interesting, something fresh every measure, all this expectation, and then you fulfill that expectation. That's what it's all about. Do too much of that and it gets a little bit messy, but do a little bit of it and it's very tasteful. You could take any of these moves we're talking about today and do just one of them in a 12-bar blues and you'll sound better instantly. Do two of them and wow, you're really happening. And then do any more than that and you're starting to approach jazz. All right, so here we are. We're getting towards those last 4 bars of the 12-bar blues, bars 9, 10, 11, and 12. So then, after you return to your 1 chord, you can drop down. You can drop down to, say, an F sharp, which a lot of songs do. There's a lot of, there's even country songs that do that, like Crazy by Willie Nelson.